Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Midwestern Archaeology Podcast. This is Lee Strange, and welcome to the show. Today, we're joined by Bob Genheimer, the George Revachol Curator of Archaeology at the Cincinnati Museum Center, whose career has helped shape our understanding of the region's deep past. Bob has been an essential part of the Museum Center's archaeological work since 1990. Over his decades of service, he has processed and cataloged over 300,000 artifacts, supervised dedicated archaeology and ethnology volunteers, operated the museum's archaeology lab, and led research across both prehistoric and historical archaeology. His work spans late pre-contact and Hopewell age studies, lithic technology, and historical investigations into privies, urban sites, and 19th century potteries. Today, we will be continuing our series on the Fort Ancient Cultural Complex of the Midwest. Last episode, I spoke with Dr. Cook about the Mississippian and Hopewell connections to the people that lived during the early Fort Ancient period. Today, Bob and I will be discussing the cultural and demographic change in the Fort Ancient's middle and late periods. Thank you, Bob Genheimer, for being here today.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Yes. So can I ask you, I'm curious about your own personal journey with archaeology. How did you first get involved in archaeology and museum curation?
Well, I can start way back if you want.
Yeah, go as far back in time
so
as you
when
want.
when I was a kid growing up,
Mhm.
I was always interested in stuff that I would find in the woods. I'd find old bottles, I would bring them home, and my mother would throw them out, and I'd bring more home, and I would look at old foundations where I grew. I grew up in Clifton, near the University of Cincinnati, and there was woods with all these old foundations in it. And I remember I felt special. I felt like I was the only person who could interpret these limestone ruins that were there. So I loved doing it. I was interested in the past, but I didn't know what to call it. I had no idea. So
Interesting.
then when I went to the University of Cincinnati as an undergrad, now 53 years ago as an undergrad. And I took courses in Intro to History and Intro to Anthropology, of course, where archaeology is taught. And as I've told people before, I don't remember the history courses, but I do remember the anthropology courses. They were talking about archaeology, and they were talking about doing field schools and all this. And that's when I knew what I really wanted to do was get my hands dirty. I wanted to play in the dirt and do this as well. So that solidified it for me. So that was, early on in my college career. When I graduated, I applied for archaeology jobs and got all of them.
Nice.
I remember that summer I had to choose between 3 or 4 jobs at what it was, and I actually accepted one at what is now Ohio History Connection. It was the Ohio Historical Society, and worked as a survey archaeologist for them for that entire summer, doing that survey work, going through plowed fields, collecting, looking at right-of-ways for things. They were doing a little bit of shovel testing, but it was absolute fun. They were paying me to dig in the dirt, doing what I wanted to. If I had another job, I'd have done this on the weekend. So I did that for a while. And then this job came up in town at Miami Purchase Association, which is now called Cincinnati Preservation Association. And they were a regional office of the State Historic Preservation Office, and they were looking to hire a survey archaeologist. It was here in town in Cincinnati. And so I took that job, and it was the same sort of thing. I learned how to record sites. We did a lot of walking, did some shovel testing, that sort of stuff, dealt with municipalities and Duke Energy and all that sort of stuff. I absolutely loved it. That job disappeared. Due to cuts in funding. So I quickly switched to doing CRM work, cultural resource management. And I was doing my own survey work, and I did that for about 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And I kind of liked it. There was a lot of freedom, and I was working in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, a little bit in Indiana. And then I got a phone call from Wes Cowan at the time, Cincinnati Museum of Natural History, and he said, "We're looking for a collections manager here at the museum." Now, what they offered me in pay wasn't what I was making the other thing, but I like to talk. It's what I do for a living now.
Yeah.
And most of my work doing CRM work was by myself, or, I'd be out in the field, but then I'd be back in my home office writing this stuff up. The phone would ring and I would jump to answer because there'd be a human being on the other end of the line.
Yes.
And I thought, well, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. If it didn't work out, I could always go back to CRM. So I took that job, and I learned that I loved it. I loved the museum environment, the collecting philosophy, that's, learning how to take care of things, dealing with researchers. What are they interested in? What would they want to see when they come in? So that was a lot of fun. Plus working on exhibits and interpretive stuff. And museum people are nerds. They're really
I
strange
believe it.
people. And they were like, all of a sudden I realized, well, these are my people.
Right.
So, fast forward, here I am 36 years later.
Wow.
I'm still at the museum, but now instead of a collections manager, I'm the curator of archaeology. So it's been a sort of a strange ride. And I would love to say that I chose most of these paths, but it sort of pulled me along.
Oh, I see.
Like
Interesting.
current, this is like, I get somewhere and then somebody, oh, well, here's this.
Right.
And yeah, I just move the canoe over into this current and do that. So, in doing all this, I've learned lots about people and institutions and where the sites are and what the public is interested in archaeology.
Yep.
Which
That's
is
very important.
Which is totally different than what the researchers are.
Yes.
And it is much different. So one of the things that we do at the museum, we do a lot of tours. In fact, I have a tour tomorrow morning.
Oh, awesome.
So the tours is where you get to tell people things that they're never going to see in an exhibit. They're not going to learn in an academic class because you have at your disposal, bad word disposal, but you have in front of you all these great collections.
Yeah. And
not just in archaeology, ethnographic stuff, and the museum has zoology and paleontology. All these things are there. So on an educational sort of thing, it's really fabulous to do.
Yeah.
And again, since I like to talk, this is a great outlet for it. I always thought maybe, in another life, I could have been a bagger at Kroger's and they would have told me to shut up because I'd be talking to every customer.
That's awesome.
So, but that's where I am. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
talking
a lot, but
you are.
If I answered the question or not,
if there was ever a time to, go into a lot of detail, talk a lot, to yap, if you will, it is now. And I would imagine, so from the time that you started your career to now, archaeology, especially Midwestern and American archaeology, I'm sure has changed quite a bit. And what are the main changes? I'm just curious what your observation.
And what has changed, and I can tell you specifics, but in generalities, it's technology. Sure. The technology from when I first started doing this work in the 1970s has gone, it's just incredible leaps forward in technology. Number one with that would be remote sensing. Back in the day when we started this, you had no way of knowing what you were going to dig into.
Right.
As you know, you work for a group and what you see when you arrive someplace is ground, it's soil.
Yeah.
Unless there's
maybe some bumps.
Yeah, there could be bumps or depressions or something there or foundations or something there. But you never know what you're going to be there until you dig. Well, remote sensing all of a sudden comes along and Americans weren't the first to do it. In Europe and England, they've been doing this for a long time. And we finally started to catch up probably sometime in the late 90s. But really in the last 15, 20 years, it's just gone, hey, there's so much remote sensing done. So if I just talk about the Han site, which we did field schools on for 12 years, when we first started that back in 2008, we thought, well, where are we going to dig? We knew where the site was when it was cultivated because you could see the ring of houses in the mid and all this sort of stuff, but that wasn't visible. Now it was in grass, and so we had to resort to doing core testing. So we would take an oak field soil core, and we, like every 5 meters, we did this for almost a week. We'd go down and see what was there. So we knew where to dig. And at that site, it was work because the dense parts of that site are so dense that you can't get to core through it.
Right.
It's just crunch, crunch, crunch.
Yes.
You're breaking flint and bone and pottery as you go down.
No.
And if you wind up in the central plaza, which is vacant, take a core right through it and there's nothing there. So we were able to identify where that plaza was and so we thought, well, we're going to see if our first goal was to identify a house. So we did it that way. But starting the next year, I worked with Jared Burks out of Columbus, Ohio Valley Archaeology, Inc., and we started doing remote sensing and magnetometry, and we started doing initially a handheld gradiometer, and it's very slow. You have to set up grids, and then you have to set up rope lines, and you can't wear any metal, and you're holding this cylinder and walking around with it, and you turn around in a row, and you keep switching back and forth, switch back, switch back. But it told us all these amazing things. It's like, oh my God, but it took so much time. A couple of years later, we start switching to larger arrays, wheeled arrays.
Right. I've seen those.
And now the last time he was there, he did it. I think it was 5 dual magnetometers on one array.
Wow.
He was still pushing it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, it was also, he didn't have rope lines because it was hooked up to GNSS and GPS. So it knows where it is. So you don't have to do anything. You just turn it. It always knows where you are. So it produces these great maps, and the maps are just as good as the other ones that we did. So that to me, we couldn't have done most of the stuff we did in Hahn. We couldn't have done any of it
really
without that remote sensing. It is that good. And it still is, we're using it anywhere we can today. And I know that you guys at ARI have used it as well, because I've seen the stuff out at the guard site. There's a lot of unexplained stuff out there.
Yeah, a lot of anomalies.
We wish we knew what's going on. A lot of circles and crescents. Yeah, so technology, again, comes back to also, enhances in radiocarbon dating. It's much more accurate
AMS. Today.
It's that, the calibration curves have gotten better. So we have a better handle on time doing that. So, if spatially we're to dig and you get a handle on time, those are such good things to have that we didn't have when we first started. And I would almost certainly tell you that it's going to get better as we go. LiDAR is another thing that is being used. LiDAR more so in finding things that we didn't know about, as opposed to, remote sensing is used at a site we already know the site's there. LiDAR said, well, wow, we didn't even know this was here. And it shows up on LiDAR. Those are great things to use. And we're doing a lot of other soil testing now, phosphate testing, things like that, looking at source, how can we tell if midden's here, those sorts of things. So the traditional way of digging with a shovel and a trowel and a screen is really being, the stuff, the whole layers added to that, that makes it more palatable, and we can get more information out of it. But controlling for time is a big thing to know.
How has the museum center's evolved over time? Has it been always pre-contact artifacts in your collection, or has there been more of a mix?
I don't know if it's actually evolved, because we have museums have collection policies. So, and those policies have to do with a number of things. What are the interests of the staff there? So, and this is true in academia too. You have professors that are interested in one time period, and if they leave, then they may have collections that, no one's using this anymore. But early on, the museum got involved in digging for an ancient. And some of their first stuff they did right after World War II in 46, 47, 48, and 49 was at the Turpin site on the eastern side of Cincinnati, just north of Lunken Airport. The site is still there. Rob Cook, who they and Aaron Comstock have worked there at least 5 or 6 years in a row. Don't know if they're going to be there this year, but they have worked there. In fact, we worked out there with them.
Oh, really?
So that Turpin site, as you know, is a formation site, and it's mostly a middle formation site, although there is some earlier stuff there. There's some early stuff. So it does have a lot of Mississippian influences in it, but also it'll go up into the middle part of it as well. So it's an extremely interesting site. It has mounds, which the guard site has a mound as well. And we don't, the formation sites that I typically work on do not have mounds. They're usually a little bit later. So we started off after World War II doing these collections. And if you've worked on a formation site, they produce nothing but garbage and trash, which is one of the reasons why we quit digging at Hahn after 12 years. There's just too much stuff. Sooner or later, you have to stop and catalog it, wash it up, and start writing it up.
Right.
So we had stopped on that. So we started amassing these large Fort Ancient collections. In fact, we have the largest Fort Ancient collections anywhere in the world.
Wow. That's not hard to believe at all.
Yeah, because we have like 20, 23, 24 village sites represented, not all of which we dug, but some of them, they are our own field collections. So we've had our museum was dug at Madisonville, at Shoemaker, at Hahn, at Turpin. We also assisted in excavations at Guard. There's, we've done all that stuff. And so we are sort of a knowledge base for Fort Ancient.
Yeah.
And we represent mostly middle and late Fort Ancient.
Which is lucky.
We have some early stuff. And there are earlier things at these same sites too. So like
late woodland.
Hahn has early Fort Ancient. We were just looking at some features yesterday or the day before yesterday from there. So the stuff is there. So the bulk of our pre-contact collections are Fort Ancient. Secondarily, we have large surface collections from the regional office system that I had worked for originally, and those got donated to the museum when they closed up. So we have 12 counties in Southern Ohio that, these were the original survey efforts in those counties going back 1972, 73. So we have those collections as well, which also has Fort Ancient material in it. And of course, now we have the NAGPRA stuff. And you would, suggest it. Has NAGPRA changed archaeology? I think it's changed the way that we do archaeology and the way that we think about doing archaeology, mostly. Because we wouldn't consider going into the field to do something if it's pre-contact without discussing it with our tribal partners at the museum. And right now we have nearly 20 tribal partners we've met in person, 20 tribes, another probably 30 that we've met with remotely. So, we want to use those connections. We talk to them. What do you think about doing this? Which works fine. I've never had a situation where any of them said, no, we don't think you should do this, because they know that we're going to do it respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the important. That's probably the biggest change in what has happened to me. We didn't do that in the past. We never talked to Native people. Not sure why we didn't. And I think once you do it, your first thought is, why in the hell didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing bad about it.
Right.
There's nothing. I think a lot of people are afraid they're going to want to control everything. They're going to do this. No, they're interested in this stuff too. Talk to them. If you're working on pre-contact stuff, this is their people. This is their story.
Right.
So I always encourage people, talk to them. If you're not talking to them, you're hiding from them. That's the way I view it. Just talk to them. Sometimes they just want to be listened to. They want you to tell them stuff and listen to what they have to say.
Absolutely.
And act respectfully from, what you learn from that. So NAGPRA, yes, has changed it. And I tend not to think of it as NAGPRA anymore, because we've gone beyond NAGPRA. NAGPRA has introduced us to all these relationships that we didn't have. And a lot of what we do today with our tribal partners doesn't necessarily have to do with NAGPRA.
Oh, really?
So we're working with them on exhibit stuff.
Oh, that's
interpretation.
Awesome.
So we now have tribal partners, and it's relationships that have to be maintained. And the Cincinnati Museum Center is very great at working with tribal partners. They encourage us to do that. They recognize that it's the right thing to do. So it's a great place to work in that respect.
Right. It's hard to, I think it's hard, just given all of that you just said, it's hard to overstate the role that the Cincinnati Museum Center has played in this region's understanding of its own material past, and also modeling tribal relations as well. We talk at ARI all the time about how Cincinnati, the CMC, is just a model for emulation for ARI as well in that regard.
Ready to dig into discovery? Join the Archaeological Research Institute with a student or family membership. Whether you're a junior explorer, apprentice archaeologist, college researcher, or a part of the family expedition team, you'll enjoy hands-on experiences, exclusive passes, and a Field Notes magazine packed with stories and activities. Memberships start at just $25, and every level helps support real archaeology in your community. Join today and start exploring at the Archaeological Research Institute.
So we've been kind of skirting around the Fort Ancient, been talking about them, referring to them. So why don't we just turn our attention and fully focus on them? So listeners to the previous episode will have already been introduced to who the Fort Ancient were, but just to kind of get a refresher about who, when, and where the Fort Ancient are based, Bob, can you give us just a quick overview about the Fort Ancient and what we mean when we use that term?
Yeah, so archaeologists use the word Fort Ancient for roughly from about 1000 AD up to about 1650 AD. And it's a lot of stuff to throw under one name. And personally and professionally, I don't think it all should be under that name. I think there are big differences between early Fort Ancient and late Fort Ancient. Differences to the effect that I suspect they're not the same people, or that makeup of people has changed through time, which would be understandable. Nothing is static.
Absolutely.
Change is the only constant. So we start seeing stuff here again about 1000 AD We don't have a lot of sites that early on. I can probably name 3 or 4 where we have that sort of material. Guard is one, which is why Guard is such a unique site. It's a very important site. There's a site up in Butler County that also has some radiocarbon dates from that, the 10th century there, or the 11th century, I'm sorry, that show that's very early. We have a couple of pit features at Hahn that have 11th century dates. And the pottery is totally different. Everything is, you can tell it's Fort Ancient, but it looks nothing like the later stuff, which is why and archaeologists and historians and people in general are always interested in what is the first thing,
Right.
What is the oldest thing? What is the first thing? And I've never quite understood that because there's a whole lot of other interesting stuff that's not first.
Right.
To get stuck on that. But we're also, how did this come about?
Absolutely.
How did this start? And Rob probably explained to you that there's a lot of Mississippian influences coming in from the West, down the Evansville area and other places that come up here. So maize, corn agriculture, wall trench houses, shell temper and pottery.
Villages.
Villages. Yeah. So we didn't really have villages or these circular or semicircular villages. So these things all of a sudden tend to show up. And the whole question was, are these just ideas or are there people behind this? So they could be ideas up here that we know there was already populations of people already here. And how did this whole thing, what was the interplay that went on here? But it's clear that people moved up here, brought this stuff up, commingled with people who were already here, which is one of the reasons why I think you see a lot of, the differences in pottery and stuff. If you go to these early and middle Fort Ancient sites, there's a lot of differences in temper and surface treatment and decoration, because I think it's not just one population of people.
Right.
You're looking at different pottery paradigms and all this other stuff. So we see this stuff come in. The reason that I am interested in it is the drastic change that they were bringing about. So for most of the pre-contact period, these people have had mobility.
Right.
They had to go places to get the resources to subsist. So they had seasonal rounds. They would do all this sort of stuff. Occasionally, when resources were higher, they may have base camps, like the DuPont site, and where the cooling tower is, and Shawnee Lookout that you can probably see from this office here.
I was there a few days ago.
Yeah, so that site is another, one of these early sites where you can see all this stuff. But so when I look at these sites, what intrigues me is, why did they do this? What is the impetus? And put yourself in their shoes. So you've been spending most of pre-contact period being mobile, hunters and gatherers, collectors, fishermen, whatever. And then somebody says, we're going to grow corn. We still need these other things, but not as much. And we're going to all live in one place in a circular village where we walk out the front door and everybody walks out the front door and you can face each other. So the social structure is different, all this. It's not just that change, it's the risk that they took to do this. And I am always been interested in, why do people take risks?
Yeah.
And all of us do this in our life today. We take risks. Do I buy a house? Do I marry this woman? Do I go to grad school, or do I just keep doing what I'm doing?
Do I move to this new city?
Right. So we take risks. These people chose to take a risk, and it worked. It didn't work perfectly all the time, but it worked enough because they're still doing that when Europeans arrive and when Europeans essentially push them away.
Right.
They're still doing that. So they made that work where they could stay in one place most of the year, maybe 10 months. They may hunt and do stuff after that, but that gives them stability. And then it results in changes in their diet and all sorts of other stuff. That's why Fort Ancient is so damn interesting to me. Because it is a total change in what went on. And it's the most recent, which means it's the easiest to document. It's, preservation is the best. If you look at these late Fort Ancients like Madisonville, the late stuff, it looks like it was thrown out yesterday. Even the early stuff is still in good shape. When you go back in time to these earlier sites, into woodland periods and archaic, then it's a game of stone and bone, and mostly stone.
Right.
Even the bone doesn't survive. So the amount of questions that you can answer, all the material surviving, plus they're staying in one place. You don't have to go look at 30 sites somewhere, get everything that they're doing on their last. They're all in one place. archaeologists are essentially lazy people. That's why we love Fornation. And I mean, you could talk about this all day. And I had discussions with other people that do Fornation. It is like the best time period that you could think of to do this sort of work. And there are a lot of sites, and a lot of them still exist.
Absolutely. To your point about archaeological visibility of just sedentary populations, the more you stay in one location, the more likely you're just to leave traces of your day-to-day life. And it's also that adoption of agriculture moment is so interesting anywhere you study in the world. That switch of why these people took this risk into this completely new life way when before there wasn't really a previous example of it. I mean, with the Fort Ancient example, there might be some Mississippian influence as far as, they're doing this over there. But aside from that, it's a very novel way to at least I would imagine what came before, just a completely new imagining of how to orient their lives. And that's something I tell kids all the time on field trips. So now that we kind of have summarized the Fort Ancient period, or the early Fort Ancient period, which we covered in the last episode, you mentioned that the Museum Center has focused primarily on the middle and late periods. So just to start with the middle period, what are the really most important sites, and what are some trends that we see from this time period? So from early 1080 to 1200 roundabout.
No two people will agree on it.
Sure.
We'll agree on this.
Okay, sure. So from 1200 onward to 1500 as the boundary for the middle period.
I'd go earlier than that.
Oh, okay.
1450. You can even go 1400. Depends on who you talk to. That's before Madisonville starts. And Madisonville that's the big intruder right there.
The textbook,
because we can see it. It exists. All of a sudden it exists and things change. That's usually 1450. It could be a little earlier than that. Doesn't mean that everything died out.
Right.
Because as we find out, these sites are very complex. Just because, this is 1450 doesn't mean they woke up and said, now we're Madisonville and we're not Anderson or Middle Fort Ancient. Things persist. And even years ago, Rob did took some sherds that we had done and did some optical luminescence on them.
Wow.
Looking at designs on decorations on pottery, and then dating them through this luminescence. And if you agree that the luminescence is correct, I'm not 100% sure it is, it would show that things like gouache persisted in what we would call Madisonville today.
Okay.
So it's not clean.
Yeah.
Everything's changing independently of each other. But over time you start to see that changes sort of build up.
Right.
So, Middle Fort Ancient is what they refer to as a lot of people would call the Baroque of Fort Ancient.
Oh, interesting.
If I can use that term, mostly because of the pottery, the neck designs on the Middle Fort Ancient stuff. Now we start to see it. We see it in early Fort Ancient, but not as much as we do in Middle Fort Ancient. Almost all those necks, not all of them. There's probably 30 or 40% of all pottery vessels are undecorated. Well, a lot of the jars are decorated. Stuff on their necks. Most prominent is gouache, and the most prominent of that is curvilinear gouache, which is a ribbon pattern that goes over and under around the vessel. And anytime that you have a circular vessel, even potters today, when they put designs on, they tend to do something that is sinuous like that, that goes around, and it meets up on the other side. So you can start doing these nice curves and go around. And then you get to the other side, they tend not to match up unless you're really good. And you're doing this in a hurry. That's where you put the handle. And if you look at modern potters today, they do the same thing. If you took any Fort Ancient pot you had from Guard and had a decorated neck and a handle on, if you took that handle off, you will see how they meet up, and they don't meet up.
How good of a potter they were.
Yeah, well, no one's going to see it because the handle goes over the top of it.
Right.
And if you watch potters today, they still do that. Not trying to reproduce native pottery, but any pottery that they do that is circular and there's a design that goes around, it tends not to meet up perfectly on the other side unless you're really a good artist. And some people are good enough that on a turning vessel, they can anticipate. But most of us are like, oh, that didn't work out.
Right.
So that's where you put the handle. And so
interesting.
So the Baroque part of that, and then we get rectilinear gouache, which is a similar sort of thing, only angular. So with smooth lines, angular lines, we get line-filled triangles, which are angular lines. And of course, archaeologists refer to these in geometric terms. Yeah. Because that's the way we're trained. When we talk to our tribal partners or native partners, they see things in those, which we don't see. That's the reason why you should talk to your tribal partners. this is their stuff. This is their ancestors who made this.
Yeah.
They have insights into what's going on.
Yeah.
So they look at that. This is a mountain. These are stars. These punctates are stars. This is a rainbow. These curved lines.
Yeah.
Or these sinuous lines on guilloche are a snake.
Interesting.
That's what it is going around. So there's more to it than just the geometry, the sort of crudeness that archaeologists bring to classification.
Sure.
Which not just crude, but it's like dead classification. There's no liveliness to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't say anything other than I understand geometry, but does it actually classify what's going on?
Right.
Who knows?
That's an important point, because oftentimes archaeologists or archaeologists describe concepts as if they're talking to other archaeologists and not as if they're talking to other people who might just be interested in what these things meant to the humans that made them at the time.
And when I do that on talks, the general public will ask me, well, what do these decorations mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if I say that, no archaeologist has ever asked me that. Because I can tell you what the name of it is. So that's
interesting.
So the pottery is fabulous. I just got a request today, and I won't tell you what it is, but Archaeology Magazine. But it was from Archaeology Magazine for images of curvilinear guilloche pottery.
That's awesome.
So because it is sort of unique to northern Kentucky, southwestern Ohio, southeastern Indiana, this area right in here, you see it a little bit in other places, but it's pretty much down here. And it's just it's a great design, and if you work on a lot of Fort Ancient stuff, you will get sick of it because it's all over. You get pieces of it, and you're trying to say, well, what is this total design from two little lines? And if you've seen enough of it, sometimes you can do it.
Right.
So it's the pottery it's really cool.
If I might, I've got a question about that. So you mentioned that there was a lot of diversity and variation in ceramic style. Was that always true, or did this Fort Ancient ceramic tradition start off kind of uniformly with those early Fort Ancient sites, and then kind of using that material grammar or the style of that, it evolved into different branches and different regional variations?
Yeah. So early on in Fort Ancient, you can see this stuff at Guard too. But the pottery that the Mississippian influence folks are using looks very Fort Ancient. A lot of decorated necks with incised necks with guilloche, smooth lines, angular lines. But you have to remember, at the same time, there were already people living there making their own pottery. And making it not with shell, or if shell was included, shell was only included as an additive. So there's still, if it has shell, I can guarantee it's going to have rock in it as well.
Right.
It's going to have limestone or sand or something else, or grit, because that's what they've been making pottery with for the last 1,500 years. They know it works. If somebody told you we're going to use shell in the pottery, well, okay, but I'm still going to put this stuff I know works in it. And through time, what we find is from the sites that we've worked on is that we sort of there's sort of an amalgamation of that pottery where everyone is then starting to make pottery that looks Fort Ancient, has the Fort Ancient decorations, and the additives that are going into the shell tend to get less and less and less. So when you get into the late Fort Ancient, it is mostly just shell with almost nothing else.
Wow.
And we just documented that on a paper that I did where at Hahn, we had a deep pit there where we actually could see it. And it was only middle Fort Ancient, this pit, an enormous pit. When I say enormous, it was probably 25 meters across.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
So it was infill from a pit that probably went to a mound or an earthwork next to it. And so we were able to see that through time. It changes. And so you get a lot more, it's a lot more homogenized as you go forward in time.
Interesting.
In late Fort Ancient. So the pottery, you don't have a lot of it. Now, there is a lot of, these sites are multi-ethnic and diverse, so you can have other people's pottery there.
Yeah.
So we get Oneota pottery, we get other stuff, but the Fort Ancient stuff tends to, it's those decorated necks until you get to Madisonville. And those decorated necks disappear.
Interesting.
They just
completely
disappear.
Wow.
Yes. The only decorations we see then on handles, we see lip notches. Sometimes that's pretty much it. There isn't a lot of other decoration. Well, we'll see animals sometimes on handles,
Hmm.
but that all that Baroque influence, all that great decoration tends to disappear. We have all these functional vessels, and jars look like we get bigger jars as well out of some of these as well.
And so you said that this is Madisonville?
Yeah, what we call Madisonville, which
Sure.
is, or Late Fort Ancient here, it's synonymous here.
Okay. And so if we're thinking about what have been contemporaneous at that time that may have brought about this change, so is this 1600s onward, more or less?
No, it's again 1450.
Oh, okay.
1500. So most of this appears to be prior to or just at when Europeans arrive on the East
Interesting.
Coast.
Okay.
So it's not 100 years, 150 years in.
Yeah.
This change is happening, and it's possible. So if the Madisonville folks are different people, doesn't mean that the other people were there before are totally gone. I think some of those people may have moved back west again and went back, so that we may have slightly different populations. Now, in an archaeological sense, it's hard to see that, because if you think about what do we find in an archaeological site, a Fort Ancient site, we find stone, bone, flint, botanicals.
Right.
You can put different people in there, they're still going to produce those same things.
Right.
So the things that tend to be different are the ceramics and the flint technology. We see both of those change, the flint and ceramics change, which is why I think there's probably an influx of different people. Later on, I think that influx probably has a lot to do with what's happening on the East Coast, and all those changes are being pushed. So people and changes are being pushed west,
right?
And that is changing who lives where, how long people stick around. And I think that's what's happening to Madisonville, particularly after 1500, 1550. That once you get that late, there's a lot of stuff happening on the East Coast, and those changes are being pushed inward.
Right.
There's disease, trade items.
Yep.
All of a sudden, we have European copper. Madisonville has European copper beads. We have glass beads. We have brass. We have these big copper plates. We have French honey gun flints. We don't typically find the gun parts because they corrode away. Guns are made out of the worst material possible if you want them to be preserved. They're just base metal, they just disappear. But the gun flints stick around, and we know they're European, so we know that stuff is coming to them, either direct trade or people are bringing it to them.
Right.
And that's not the first time, as you know, that that's happened. So during the Hopewell period, we have all this influx of trade material from the Southern Atlantic, the Southeast, the Southwest, the other parts of the Western part of the Midwest. We have Obsidian, all these things are coming in. We see that again during Fort Ancient period. We have a Clarksdale bell from DeSoto at Madisonville.
I think I read a reference to that actually. Yeah.
So
it's very interesting.
That's more easily dated. That's a 16th century piece, so we can date that. So we know that they're dealing with Europeans. It's unlikely that a lot of Europeans are there that early, but they do start arriving.
Yeah.
And we think that's probably why, at the end, that's why they abandoned sites like Madisonville sometime, near the end of the 17th century. Now, we do have some information. They may have come back later, but they abandoned those sites because they just weren't tenable anymore.
I see.
The Iroquois and other folks are coming down here. And if you look where the sites are, too, they're not on the Ohio River, which is, the Ohio River is a great transportation corridor, but it's a dangerous place to be.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because it's where anyone that's coming here is probably going to come down the Ohio. And if you're right on the Ohio, you could be in trouble. So most of the Fort Ancient sites that you see in the Little Miami and Great Miami are exactly there. They're not on the Ohio.
Interesting.
So like St. Line site, for instance, what is it? 2-3 miles from the mouth of the river. The guard site is fairly close, but it's up off of it, and Madisonville site is on a high Illinois outwash terrace that's probably 150 feet above the Ohio basin. It's way up there. Some of those things suggest security,
right?
That they had to be always cognizant of security on what was going on, because groups were coming down. They needed replacement people for wars that they were fighting and so forth, or they were trying to establish trade things, but they were the aggressors.
Yeah.
And if you weren't able to handle that, the easiest way to handle that situation is to pack up and move. Go further west where it's not as much of an issue. If you start going into Indiana for other places, the Iroquois had very much less influence in some of these, in the Haudenosaunee tribes and people up there. They had less influence. So at the end of Formation is a complete mess.
I know. I've been reading about it, and the so-called Proto-Historic period is very, very messy and very, very interesting at the same time. I want to get to those discussions about the later Fort Ancient, but just to make sure that we understand what kind of developments are taking place during this time. So you mentioned that this Madisonville, these changes in the ceramic technology occurred before European contact, before European goods start to show up. And from what my own knowledge about this time period is that environmentally, there was also some change as well going on that started around the 1400s or the 1350s, 1400s with the Little Ice Age. And so can we just get into how that might have affected the way that Fort Ancient villages may have been able to feed themselves up to this point? So do we think that there's more drought during this time period, that there may have been more scarcity?
Well, Rob Cook has done a lot on this. And so they looked at, rain levels and temperature regimes. They have to do little ice and so forth. And it seems like this part of the Ohio Valley was less impacted by these droughty conditions than, let's say, going down to Cahokia or Evansville and places down the Ohio or further on, where it seems like it may have been, you may even characterize it as being catastrophic. So people, and maybe that's why we have these even earlier influx, people were moving up the Ohio River. It's hard to get a handle on what you really have to understand what the crop yields are. And we really don't have a handle on what that is. We know that they're saving maize in underground silos or pits. That's how they get through the winter. Yeah. It would be necessary. Certainly, the reliance on maize, if you don't have that, existing in a semi-sedentary sort of is not going to work for very long. Yeah. Because then you have to travel for resources, and then why go through all the trouble and effort to have a village when you're only going to be there part of the year? So I think that this area up here was more stable than it was further west, which allowed for this sort of fluorescence of Fort Ancient to occur here. And that's essentially what it is. It's a group of ideas and people that it just explodes up here. Yeah. In an area where they weren't before, but other people still existed. How did they work this out with these other people? Right. What didn't you want to be a fly on the wall?
Oh my gosh, I know. Yes, absolutely.
We're going to go. We have this pottery that works better than yours. We have maize. You can just grow it and all this sort of thing. I don't know how that conversation went, but it seems like these groups got together and formed a coherent group. But as you know, coherent groups don't stay coherent for very long. Yeah. There were issues arise, cultural issues and environmental issues, and maybe that Madisonville represents some of those issues that were calling for change. Yeah. Again, I'm thinking they may be probably different people. A lot of people will attribute Lake Fort Ancient or Madisonville to the Shawnee. Yep. The Shawnee themselves will tell you that that's probably who they are. Yeah. I can't dispute that. I think the Shawnee are probably the best of it. Also the Miami could be part of that. There are other tribes over here that don't exist anymore, like the Massapequa, and other groups that, Oneota groups that we get Oneota pottery at these sites down here. So we know that they were here, or at least there were marriage partners, or there was trade networks. So we know those people were here. So it's really hard to get a handle on what happened, but we can tell what we do see that from the early beginnings of sites like Guard and so forth, where they're very small houses. Yep. If you've seen the house footprints at Guard, they're very small. Yep. When the ones that we uncovered at Hahn, those now we're up to 5 by 6 meters. They get bigger than that. Really? So we're able to document through time, the houses get larger, which can suggest a number of things. That population is increasing is maybe one, or that the size and makeup of these households is increasing. And the households are, we would assume that these people are related or or loosely related to each other. So maybe that makeup is changing. So the house sizes are getting larger. And if you look at some of the work that uh, uh, Dave Pollock and Gwen Henderson have done at Fox Farm, they have these enormous houses, like tripartite houses with rooms and all this sort of stuff. So the social structure appears to be changing as well. And I think they really get into the groove of being agriculturists who are supplementing their subsistence with hunting, fishing, and gathering. And they've got it down to a science.
Right.
If the climate is good, they're in great shape.
Yeah.
And that's the Middle Formation is where a lot of the work has been done on faunal remains. What are they eating? All this other stuff, because there are a lot of those sites that have produced that. The later Formation sites also the same. There's a lot of those sites show really dense. In fact, they're much denser than the Middle Formation sites. So what happens, like if you take Han, for example, that was a nice Middle Formation site. It has a circular village with a central plaza. But Madisonville comes in. Well, they didn't put anything in the plaza. It's still empty, but we no longer can find their houses.
Really? Interesting.
And one of the reasons is because they don't have wall trenches. They have directly set posts in the ground. And the only thing the Formation people do is dig holes in the ground. And so everything that the Middle Formation people had done there is now being overlain and dug through.
Interesting.
And disturbed by the later Madisonville stuff. Still Formation, as we call it, but they're digging through it.
Right.
So one of the tasks doing it in a site like Han is distinguishing between the Middle and late Formation. But because they've dug through the earlier stuff, their trash pits contain the earlier material. So there is no such thing at Han and at most Madisonville sites as a true Madisonville trash pit because they dug it into the ground as a storage pit through Middle Formation debris.
Wow.
So that stuff winds up back. If they dug it as a storage pit, when its life is over as a storage pit, it has to be filled in. Nature pours a vacuum. You got to fill it. They're filling it with material that they're digging up nearby.
Right.
And it's got all that earlier stuff in it. Wow. So it can be a nightmare in trying to distinguish what's what. And the way the one way to get around it is if you want to date things or do it, you look for primary deposits. A deposit. This is not a deposit that they were just filling a hole with. This is like, a layer of mussel shells this deep where there's 2,000 mussel shells, or a layer of fish scales this wide across. This is a single deposit intended for that single time period. And then typically, if it's something like fish scales, it's covered up with a deposit of clays so it doesn't smell. So if we want radiocarbon dates, we tend to pull in from what we refer to as primary deposits because the first trash pit that we dated at Han, and now I think we have 35 dates. First trash pit we dated had a Middle Formation date, but it had Madisonville pottery in it.
Really?
As well. So we had a mussel level in there where there was over 2,000 bivalves, and we took carbon from in the interior of that deposit, and we got a Madisonville date from that.
Wow.
So we learned a lesson. We burned that. We sort of, wasted that radiocarbon date because it did what we asked it to do. It's just that it was contamination in the pit. So you have to be careful doing any of that stuff. And it makes doing when you're looking at a change or evolution in pottery difficult because you have to have something. That's why we love that big 25-meter wide deposit because it's not compromised by Madisonville. They didn't get into it.
Yeah.
And it ends at the very bottom. It's rock tempered pottery.
Wow.
So woodland.
Wow.
So, it started out life as an open pit, a borrow pit, probably from an earthwork or a mound. There's one right next to it. They started filling in immediately and stuff, it would infill itself through erosion. And so it had that woodland rock tempered pottery in it, mostly small sherds. And then when you go up, we start getting for an ancient pottery, but not all is shell tempered. Some of it is rock tempered. Some of it is, it'll be limestone and maybe a little shell in it. And as it changes through time, it becomes more shell and more shell until you get up to at the break of where Madisonville starts. It's almost all shell.
Interesting.
And that's an interesting thing to see, because I think after a while, they figured out that pottery will work with just shell. It will work.
Right. They just needed some time to
you have to learn that.
Right.
You're generation after generation, like, why am I putting this sand in here? Why am I? Because I just threw this pot the other day where I didn't do that and it worked just fine. And the shell allows you to make thinner pots and bigger pots. It's great stuff. It's calcium carbonate, just like the limestone, but it works because it's lenticular. It'll form parallel to the body when it goes in there.
It's like
that
nice
gives
layered.
It's strength.
Yeah.
And it holds together. That's why for ancient pottery, they're bigger sherds. If you look at woodland sherds, they're tiny. And you would ask before about earlier pottery before for an ancient is harder to get a handle on because it's really what the term they use is friable. It breaks apart. So if it's in a plow zone, it's subjected to changes in temperature, humidity, other moisture, rain. And, after a couple hundred years, you may see a sherd on the ground and you go to pick it up and it just turns to powder in your hands because it just doesn't hold together. Rock temper is not very good at consolidating pottery. It worked at the time while they were using the vessel, but later on, it doesn't work. So we have less of a handle on what their pottery styles were earlier on. We have some knowledge. They do pottery, because it's thick, we get some of it, but it's not a lot of decoration back then.
Yeah.
And the Hopewell stuff is, there's elaborately decorated Hopewell stuff, but it's usually funerary or noun related or something like that.
Not day to day.
It's not, we get, like rocker stamp, we'll see stuff that will occur day to day, but we don't. So it's harder to get a handle on it because it's harder to collect it. And as you know, archaeology is a game of, and I tell this to my students all the it's a game of durability. You can't interpret something if it doesn't survive to you. If it disappears, it didn't exist. So that's why we do for ancient, because it's a durability game. It's all still there. And it's easier to tie tribal partners to that as well, because we used to have a handle on who was here when Europeans arrived. We have some information. So, and we can take that backwards. It's like reverse engineering. We say, oh, that's this tribe who now lives in Oklahoma, who was here. So it's easier to do.
Right. Yeah. And so just for those that don't know, you were making mention of Madison style pottery at the Han site. Am I
Madisonville,
Yeah. So just for those that may not know, Madisonville is a site that we've been talking about, but it's also the type site for a larger archaeological complex. So we can find Madisonville or style materials at other sites, not at Madisonville. That's normally how archaeologists denote.
Yeah, it can be confusing. In fact, at Han, we're talking about Madisonville sherds.
Yeah.
The Madisonville site itself is about 3,000 yards away across the river, directly across the river.
Wow. Okay.
So they're occupied at the same time. Or let's just say the occupation ranges overlap totally.
Sure. Absolutely.
So one could assume that they may have been occupied at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and then the questions arise is, well, what was happening at Madisonville site? This is the mother site. And what was happening over here? Why is this site here? And I think that the reason we see all these sites at the end of Madisonville is that it was overcrowded. I mean, I think you had refugee population who were fleeing some of the stuff that was going on. It was a very tumultuous time. And I think that we probably have groups living at Han and Madisonville that are probably related, but not necessarily closely related.
Yeah.
Because it's a safe haven. So they were probably trading partners or something. So it's multi-ethnic. And if you look at the ceramics that are there, when I first started this, I thought this is going to be easy. These people are living in villages. They're all the same people. It's going to be all the same ceramic. It is not.
Really? Wow.
No, it changes. It's just, there's different temper. I'm like, every trash pit that I do the ceramics first. So I'm doing the catalog, and I was just doing some last week. I do the ceramics and I lay them out. This is shell temper. This is shell and manganese. This is shell and limestone. This is shell and grit. This is grit. This is lime.
Wow.
And it just goes all the way down the whole thing. There's a lot of people living there. They may not all be contemporaneous, but they all left their stuff there. And it shows up in almost every context, which is cool. It's kind of like a test for you.
It is really cool.
You thought this was going to be easy, but no, we're going to throw in everything that was here before you in the same bag.
Right.
That's why radiocarbon dating is important, and really good excavation technology, methodologies, things like that are good to have to sort of tease those things out, because it can get confusing. And we're also using remote sensing, which in 95% of the time, exactly what it's showing, but that 5% can just fool the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Because most of what we were using there was magnetometry. So, and when you get a magnetometry anomaly, most times it'll look like a pit. It'll be it'll be a circle, a dark circle on there, and it'll give you a nanotesla reading how vibrant or how dense this is.
Yeah.
And you go down, and right there's the boundary of the pit. You do that, but you have to remember that the way magnetometry works is that it's just giving you a signal, so you can have a weak signal close to the surface. It'll give you the same signal as a strong signal deep down. So occasionally we get like a earth oven or a hearth, and we had that in one of these units where we started with a 2 meter by 2 meter unit. We're down 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters, 50, 60. We haven't found anything. Start coring, hit it, went down. It was the remains of, looks like probably an archaic hearth.
Wow.
And they were very nice to us. Sometimes our native folks are nice to us because they left a Miriam Trimble point in the hearth.
Just to confirm.
Here.
Yeah.
Here. What the hell this is? I don't even think we radiocarbon dated the feature, because why bother?
So with the archaic, what time frame are we talking about?
So archaic. So the Miriam Trimbles are late archaic. So you're talking 4,000 BC to 1,000, maybe 1,000 BC, maybe 800 BC.
Okay.
Somewhere in that range before there's a debate on when Adena starts.
Yeah.
So it's in that time range. And we know that at 2,000 BC, 2,500 BC, we have a lot of the population has increased, appears dramatically in the archaic groups.
Right.
A lot of that due to the seasonal. Yeah, people are coming together seasonally, mostly because of resources.
Right.
So, and that's usually late spring and summer, early fall, when you can fish, you can hunt, you can stay in one place along a stream. You don't have to go very far. And then when it becomes fall and it's time to go get the acorns and the hickory nuts, we have to actually move around to get those, or we have to move around to hunt. In the winter, you have to be mobile to hunt because it's much harder to do that. And then at the end of spring, when things look good again, you come back to these base camps.
Right.
And DuPont is one of those base camps.
Oh, okay.
There's a number of those that University of Cincinnati dug in Claremont County, Ohio.
Okay.
A couple of counties up from here along the Ohio River.
Interesting.
So, and again, the same thing. Looks like we have Maple Creek site is a big one up there. That was the archaeologist at University of Cincinnati. His dissertation was done on the Maple Creek site.
Okay.
And
what was their name?
It's Kent Vickery.
Okay.
Name.
Gotcha. Awesome.
So, and that's who when I started at UC back in 72, actually I started in late 71, but when I started in 72, he was the professor of archaeology there.
Okay.
And so my first field school I did was in 75.
Okay.
And it was at DuPont. So that's going to be, this summer will be 51 years ago, my first field school.
Wow.
And I would have to say the field school sort of really solidified it for me, because now I'm digging stuff up that no one's seen in, in this case, 3,000 or 4,000 years. I said, I mean, you can't beat this. I don't know what job you have, but you can't beat amazing. This. This is the best job in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So, I learned so much from that. And that's when I decided that's what I was going to do for a career.
Want to get more involved in local archaeology? At ARI, we identify, preserve, and responsibly explore archaeological sites in southeast Indiana, southwestern Ohio, and northern Kentucky. Our volunteers are one of the driving forces behind this mission. From participating in archaeological digs, assisting in lab work, artifact processing, and supporting field trips and fundraising, every role helps us move forward. With just a 1-hour training, you'll gain new skills, meet new people, enjoy nature, and make a real impact. Volunteering with ARI means joining a community passionate about history and preserving it for generations to come. Join us at ARI, be a part of history, be a part of the future.
So let's talk more about the late Fort Ancient. We've been talking a little bit about it. So you mentioned some pretty significant disruptions, pretty significant tumult, I guess, as you mentioned. So when we're getting into that later period, what exactly is happening in the Fort Ancient world, and not necessarily culturally, but geographically, the middle and upper Ohio River valleys? Is that disruption mainly European caused, whether direct or indirect through disease, as you said, or what exactly is going on?
I would have to say that the major disruptions in Madisonville, of course, the beginning of Madisonville, are Europeans have a lot to do with it. Not necessarily right at the beginning because this sort of material changes, but I think that's an influx of people. I think what you're seeing is movement of people where being sedentary is no longer a good option. It's not just Fort Ancient. You look at groups in Northern Ohio, the same sorts of things are going on. We sort of see things, they're reaching out to other groups for alliances and so forth. Because now and this is true in cultures, usually they only, and you can even take this to modern groups, people only tend to reach out to other folks and organizations and groups when they have to. Why did people trade at the beginning of Hopewell? It's probably because they had to. There's something that was making them do that, or people knew about this Hopewell sort of cult or whatever you want to call it, and they were interested in it and bringing stuff up to it. So there's a reason why these things occur. But we get a lot of trade at Madisonville, these later sites, from Lake Erie. So these sites around Toledo and Cleveland, or going up into New York, we see that there are connections. If we look at the objects that are there, so we have trade stuff that's coming down through the St. Lawrence. And we also have trade stuff that's coming up from the southeast, mostly. So things are coming from different directions. But trade now is also all of a sudden very, very important. We're seeing it where we don't see it. During Middle Fort Ancient, we see much less of it.
Right.
But during the late Fort Ancient period, what we're calling Madisonville, we're seeing a lot of it. I think that has to do with increased mobility. That's the result of European interaction. So the Europeans are coming here, and all the things that are happening get pushed to the west. So if you move some people out, where are they going to go? They can't go east because that's the Atlantic. There's already established groups in the southeast, so they go west. They go across the Appalachians, and they get in, and all of a sudden they run into other groups that are already there.
Right.
So you either have to work something out with them, or you have trouble with them. So I think that these sites, and I look at them as being very multi-ethnic. We no longer have what we can see as circular villages. It doesn't mean that they didn't exist. We just don't see them. So I think social structure is different. And in most cases, when you look at social structures in society, when you have different people, it requires the rules become more complex because you're trying to accommodate different folks. How do people exist next to each other? So and one way is to do is trade alliances. If you trade with people, that's not just a trade partner, that's a buddy. That's somebody that maybe you can count on if things are bad. If things go south here, we maybe can seek them out and see if we can move up near where they are or down where we are. So I think that's a lot of what's going on. There are some people that think that Fort Ancient folks, some of them at this time, actually moved west because there were very similar ceramic paradigms when you get up into southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois and other places, that these could be refugees that moved out. And I hate to use the word refugees, but sometimes people move because they know that things aren't going to be the same. It doesn't mean they were forced out at gunpoint or arrow point or spear point. It means that they realize that our existence here under these circumstances is no longer tenable. And you can't be an agriculturalist without stability. It just doesn't work. And that's how the Europeans militarily defeated a lot of the native groups, by destroying their crops. I mean, if you destroy their food, what are they going to do? So I think there's a lot of turmoil in this, in the Madisonville time period. And we see, and again, incorporation of European trade goods, which would have been a big thing.
Absolutely.
And so most of that work that was dug on, as far as people that were dug up, was dug up, and the late ones was dug up a long time ago. So if you look at Madisonville site, Peabody Museum and Harvard dug there beginning in the 1880s through, I believe, 1912.
Wow.
So most of the archaeologists cut their teeth digging at Madisonville. A lot of the Harvard people, that's where they started. That's where you would go because it answer all your questions. There's so much material.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of things are going on. It's hard to pinpoint precisely. The more we learn, to me, the more complex it gets. I don't know if you have Penny Drucker's.
Which one is it?
Penny Drucker.
View from Madisonville?
Yes.
Yes, we have it somewhere. I was actually looking for it to prepare for this interview, but I was not able to locate it.
She goes into great detail of what the connections are, who they're connected with, where, and the dates, and so forth, what some of it may mean. Yeah, Penny's thing is absolutely amazing.
I have to read it. Rachel, she lent it to me, and I think it just lived on my desk for so long. I didn't get to read it. I just put it back, and I'm not sure where it is now. But
yeah, if you can find a copy of, you may be able to find a copy. It's a terrific book. She did a great job. If you want to learn about Madisonville, that's the place to start. And a lot of that's not just about the Madisonville site, but Madisonville timeframe artifacts and where they occur,
right,
in the Ohio Valley.
Yeah. What I think is really interesting about this late Fort Ancient Madisonville time period is that you have this continuity, this native continuity from, the Mississippian time period, like 1000 AD, that kind of doesn't rupture, it doesn't end. That continuity doesn't end, but it does change significantly when it does come into contact with European diseases and then also European markets as well, economies and stuff like that. There's a lot that you can gain from European trade, but then you also have, if your neighbors are trading with Europeans and they're getting guns and different sorts of weapons, then you have a lot to lose by not also being plugged into that trade as well. And it's like an arms race, more or less.
And the Shawnee were really good at that. If you look at their history, they were traders and they were known for being mobile. In fact, they existed in the extreme southeast U.S., and they moved all around. They were very adaptable. And when the Europeans arrived, they saw a trade opportunity. And they knew if they were good trade partners and they were mobile, they could survive.
Right.
And that's the card they played, and they played it very well. We think that probably these late Fort Ancient sites, there's a very good chance those are Shawnee folks who became agriculturalists here until the point where even that wasn't going to work anymore.
Yeah.
Because they were being pushed out. And when the main focus of Europeans started coming in here, when it came in here in numbers, it became very difficult to stay around. No matter what the position of the U.S. government was, settlers wanted to move on. They wanted to take that land. So even if they didn't drive you out by gunpoint, they made it untenable for you to stay.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people say, well, the tribes abandoned Ohio. They didn't really abandon it. They just found out they couldn't stay.
They had no choice. Yeah.
So they moved to where they could.
Mm-hmm.
They left here and went to Kansas, most of them, and then Kansas didn't want them, and they wound up in Oklahoma, who eventually let them stay.
Right.
So yeah, it's the whole thing about Native Americans is such a fascinating subject. The whole diaspora of them moving and then becoming sovereign states and rekindling all this again it's a fabulous American story.
Yeah.
Because Native history is American history.
Yeah.
A lot of people tend to think it's not, but it is American history. They were here a long time before we were.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when the average American's kind of historical recollection begins, it's that colonist period of time. So 1700s and onward, really. And I think a lot of people just without even really being conscious that they are doing so, they think about the Iroquois, they think about other, tribal confederations as I guess the natural assumption would just be that was always how they were politically constituted. But people don't appreciate how tumultuous and how much change Native American societies in the Eastern Woodlands underwent in the pre-contact period, and then even during the contact period. There's so much is going on.
Yeah. Well, the public, most of what they've learned is it's cowboys and Indian stuff.
Right.
So if you ask them, their knowledge of Native Americans is historic.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
that the clothing, everything that's there. And I mean, we like tell them that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
I
Literally.
mean, they go back way back beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
We know here in this area, they were here probably at least 13,000 years, and
Mm-hmm.
parts of the Midwest over 20,000 years. You go in South America, and it goes beyond that. We just had the stuff in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, 23,000 years
Yeah.
ago? So we know they were here. It's just they're so ephemeral.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's the saying that love is fleeting, stone tools are forever. And that pretty much, that sums it up.
Yeah.
All we have from these earlier time periods is mostly stone.
Mm.
Because there's no preservation.
Right.
There are circumstances, of course, where it happens in dry caves and rock shelters where we can see that sort of stuff, or in sinkholes.
Mm-hmm.
But most of what we find, we'll find a fluted point.
Yeah.
Or we'll find a burin or something that we think, oh, this is probably Paleoindus. This is probably 12 or 13,000 years old.
Yeah.
But there's no real substance to it. It's hard. It becomes more difficult to tie a human face to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you get in Fort Ancient, I mean, I just posted a shirt yesterday on my site at the museum that shows thumbprints in a Fort Ancient shirt. There's a human element to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus the people they buried are still there and very obvious when you see it. And of course, that's what's happening at State Line up here right now.
Yep.
They're working on that material to get, how many ancestors are in there. There's a lot. And they're trying to get them out of there before they destroy it. People wonder, why does it take so long? Well, it takes a long time to dig a person out of the ground when there's nothing left but a skeleton.
Yep.
It does take a long time. And it's important that these people deserve to have that existence continued somewhere else, not destroyed by a backhoe. That's why we do that in America. That's why we have the CRM work. Mm-hmm. We do that to make sure we don't destroy something that shouldn't be destroyed.
Yeah. It's good that you mentioned State Line, because that's a extremely important site that there has been a lot of local discontent about, as far as how it impacts people's commute or something like that. And I know that the operations there at State Line are about to be kind of ramped up. They're going to go into overdrive. And I think the road itself might actually be closed for a period of time. And it's great that there's archaeologists because it's 100%. They're going to take everything at that site and move it somewhere else so that basically nothing remains of that site, and which is sad. You would want that site to stay where it is, and it's in the landscape. But it's also a good thing that it's being preserved and the provenience is being collected and all of that stuff.
It is being preserved.
Yeah.
And, this is under the auspices of tribal groups, particularly the Miami tribe from Oklahoma, to make sure that all the ancestors are taken out of there. And so it's a really good thing that was going on. And I worked at the State Line site in 79 and 80 when they put all that development that you see there today. That includes the warehouse that's there, the drives. The lake was put in a little earlier than that, but I was also involved in that.
Okay.
So that lake that's how they built 275 above the floodplain.
Wow.
So if you look at the other side of State Line, the 275 is sitting on like a 30-foot tall ramp that goes around.
Yeah.
That's where that dirt came from that lake. So they destroyed a part of that site.
Wow.
And actually the State Line site is what changed the laws for CRM.
Really?
Because at the time when it was done, only the contractors had to abide by the Section 106 laws that say if you're destroying something that's on the National Register or eligible for the National Register, you have to mitigate that and dig it up.
Yeah.
That rules didn't apply to subcontractors, and the subcontractors went in and dug the lake up and destroyed a big part of the site.
Just gouged it.
So it was rather embarrassing, and they changed the law because of that. But I worked in there when they were doing the road cut and the other stuff, and we worked for, more than a year.
Wow.
On that. And we had groups from several different institutions from Kentucky, Ohio, nobody from Indiana at the time, but we spent a lot of time there.
Yeah. It's a huge site. I mean, it's a pretty considerable site. So
and dense. If you've seen the Midden,
I've seen pictures. We've got friends that have been working on the excavations.
I can show you pictures from the road cut that we did.
I'd love to see. That sounds awesome.
The Midden in some places is 4 and 5 foot deep.
Wow.
And I just saw that when they were working. I was just up here last year when they were working on on the Indiana side for the work they're doing now, and they had a cut open, and it was the same way, maybe 4 foot deep.
Wow.
And there's stuff under that earlier as well. So there are archaic things and woodland things under that.
That's amazing.
So it's what you really would call a preferred landform. They really like that landform.
Yeah.
And they return to it. And one of the concepts we learned with dealing with tribal partners is this concept of home and landform. This is where their people have always been.
Yeah.
This landform, this terrace is part of them. And it's another reason why a lot of times you'll see Fort ancient sites near woodland mounds. And it's not just a coincidence. They recognize that that's where ancestors are buried. These are people that they have reverence for, and we're going to live next to them.
Right.
So yeah, St. Line is another terrific site that everybody and their brother has taken a piece out of.
Oh yeah.
And Madisonville site's even worse. It's
really?
Like, oh yeah. Madisonville site is, I don't know how much of it's left, but it's been torn apart by looters and institutions. Every institution around here, Peabody Museum, American Museum of Natural History, Field Museum, all of them at some time have gotten collections from the Madisonville site.
Wow.
So those are the sites that they've suffered a lot. Yeah. But because the collections got out there, at least we have something to say about what was there.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today with this interview. It's been very, very interesting. So thank you.
Thank you for asking me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.